Good, good. You look good, man. You look
Thank you
good.
for having me, man.
No, no problem, no problem, no problem. Thank you for you allowing me to have this great opportunity. Just allow you to just tell your story, because I know a lot of people are going through the same thing. So hey, I'm just the middleman. I'm just the broker. That's it.
We need brokers. We need middlemen.
Yeah. Without brokers and the salesmen, things don't move around, right? So I sent you some of the not the guidelines, but a good map where you can just start. You know, give us a little bit of background who you are, and whenever you're ready, you can just basically give us an overview of who you are, what do you do. We want to know who's Ulysses, basically.
And I think that that's important, man. I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share this evolving story because it's truly an evolving story. The story is far from over in many ways. It's just getting started. And I think that what people see on TikTok and what people are beginning to see on YouTube is 2 years old. That story is actually 2 years old. And for me, establishing credibility with a new audience is crucial here because what people see when they see that video is just a guy, some guy who they've probably never seen before, who is being confronted by state troopers in Pennsylvania and told that he has to leave his home. And if you don't know that guy, again, he's just any guy, a random guy among many to whom this kind of thing has happened. So, establishing myself as Ulysses Butch Slaughter, a filmmaker, a writer, a producer, a podcaster, I do a lot of things. And I was doing a lot of things the day that that happened. And so it wasn't like I was just sitting on the grass waiting for somebody to show up and evict me from my home. I was a married man. I thought, while happy is probably not the best way to describe it, I was definitely married, and sometimes marriages have ups and downs. Anybody who's been married knows that the ups and the downs are a crucial part of a marriage because it's in the down that you learn how to gain your strength so that when you are up there because you've earned being up wherever that is for you. So again, the credibility becomes important to me because I've done a lot of different types of work, as I think I've discussed with you, Pablo, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different types of work. And I want to explain some of that work to your audience. And I don't want to go on long diatribes and not leave room for you to jump in. So I want to have as much of a conversation as possible. So please, do what you have to do to pause me at whatever given time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason why I shared the video, I want to talk about why I shared the video and then why it has taken me 2 years to share the video.
Go ahead.
I'm sharing the video as a cautionary tale. That's why I'm sharing this video. I want to share this with people so that they can understand, look into a story, and everything that happens in this story, they may not be able to relate to, but some of the things that happen in this story, they may be able to relate to.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily trying to sell people on the idea that I'm a good guy, that I'm a perfect guy. The people closest to me know who I am. And to me, that's enough. The people who are closest to me, my children, my friends, my family, they know who I am. So even when they see that video on TikTok or they see it on YouTube, it still hurts them today because they know who I am. So for the people out there that this kind of thing has, if this happened to you as well, my hope is that you are part of a community of people, part of a family, a collective of friends who know who you are, so that if your credibility is ever challenged, you've got community, friends, and family like I do who will come to your aid and make sure that you don't have a total collapse.
Mm.
And so the again the credibility is crucial with my intimate group because they're the ones that I start with, they're the ones that I actually end with. And again, I say I hope the same thing for the people who are listening, whether you be man or woman. So I'm sharing this as a cautionary tale. There are a lot of things that can be learned from this. And Pablo, I'm going to look away from screen every now and then just to look at my
Go
notes,
ahead.
if that's
That's
okay.
fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right. My name is Ulysses Butch Slaughter. Let me give you some background on me, some like old school background. I'm a native of Chicago, Illinois. Grew up not far from you, Pablo, where you are. Um, I spent the first 23 years of my life in Chicago. I joined the Navy in 1990, and I'm a Navy veteran. I spent 6 years in the United States Navy. I served as a journalist, public relations specialist. I've done a lot of radio over my lifetime. I've done a lot of broadcasting, newspaper, that kind of stuff when newspapers were relevant. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. I'm a creator. And left Chicago in 1990, moved to the Philadelphia area, which is where I live now. A critical part of this story that I'll talk more about this, but a critical part of what happened to me, and I don't want to sound like a victim because I'm not a victim, but what happened to me on August the 4th, 2021, goes back to my childhood.
Mm.
On August the 4th, 2021, if you've seen that TikTok video, you will see that some state troopers approach me, and you will see that I'm holding a phone. And my instincts, man, said, take the phone with you when I saw the state troopers pulling into my driveway. And again, I'm a journalist. And so there's some things that I'm pretty quick and instinctive to do. So I want to go back to my childhood and then come back to August the 4th, 2021. June 25th, 1978, I'm living on the south side of Chicago. I was 12 years old. My mother and father had been arguing all night long. And it was pretty common for me to hear them argue as a child. Unfortunately, it was pretty common for me to watch them fight, physically fight as a child. It was something that I said I would never do, never do. But on June 25th, 1978, what for me became the logical conclusion, the fate, the destiny of people fighting the way that my parents fought, became a reality. I heard 2 gunshots go off in our house, and my bedroom door opens, and my father comes in. And my father has shot and killed my mother, Clarice. 2 bullet shots to the head. This is what he said when he came in, Pablo. He said, I'm sorry, I had to do it. She was going to leave us. He said, I'm sorry, I had to do it. She was going to leave us. Now, I heard some of the final moments of their argument. And my mother was saying that she was going to leave. And as a guy who's done many domestic violence workshops, I now understand that it is in that moment that a man or a woman decides that they are going to leave, that they are most danger. They are in the most danger when they say they are going to leave, when they try to walk out the door. And my father was holding a gun, and my mother said, I am going to leave. And I heard my father say, if you try to leave, I'll kill you. And my mother said, kill me. And I heard the 2 gunshots go off. And I wound up at the age of 12 being the lead witness, the chief witness against my father. At the age of 12, I'm sitting on a witness stand in Cook County, Illinois, Chicago, testifying against my father. For years, I despised my father. When I was a little boy, I used to ask my mother, when will I be old enough to fight my father? And she would always tell me, you'll never be old enough to fight your father. I want you to be a better man. My name is Ulysses Grant Slaughter, Jr. My father's name is Ulysses Grant Slaughter, Sr. That was important to me because I despised by name. My mother's name is Clarice, which means clarity, clear, bright light. These things are important to me because they are the types of things that guide who I would be on August the 4th, 2021, when the state troopers came for me. I didn't just show up out of nowhere. And I want people to understand, I didn't just show up out of nowhere. And I'm not just showing you some video to get attention. I'm showing you video because I've had I've been part of. I've been a player, a character in many dramas in my life. And I'm not a boy anymore. And so I know how to manage these things a little bit different than I did when I was a boy. I'll come back to that part about my parents in a moment. I want to go up to August the 4th, 2021, when the state troopers show up. My wife had disappeared for 5 days. Something had gone on, something bizarre happened, and I don't even know what happened. I just remember our last conversation. She just said she was leaving, and she walked out the door. That was, I believe, on a Saturday morning. She walked out the door. She wasn't coming back. I didn't know she wasn't coming back. And so again, when people ask me what happened leading up to this, there are things that I could see, hear, and read, and I can tell you what I saw, what I heard, and what I read, like through text messages. But I can't tell you what else was going on in her world that made her transparent to me to understand that something was going on with her. And Pablo, I hear people go through this stuff about you should be close enough to know your partner and all this kind of stuff. Look, ain't no such thing as a perfect relationship. I'd love to see the perfect relationship where all of this stuff is always clear without some kind of verbal communication. And it wasn't clear in those days before my wife left, except I'll explain one other thing in a moment. It wasn't clear that we were having anything other than one of our misunderstandings. That we were just, hey, she was upset. You got to go. Okay, go. You want to take some time away? Okay, take some time away. Do your thing. So from July 31st, 2021 until August the 4th, she just disappeared. And periodically she was texting me. Now, the first night, I didn't think a whole lot of it. I really didn't think a whole lot of it. Because it wouldn't have been the first time that either she or I thought we just needed a little bit of space and we would go stay at a hotel or something like that. Go stay with family, go stay with friends. Big deal. Now, on July 30th, this was the difference in her leaving on July 31st. On July 30th, I went to our bedroom just to go to sleep. And I had stayed out of the bedroom for a couple of nights because I was up working late. Was working on a podcast. And I didn't like going to bed late and feeling like I was going to wake her up or anything like that. And again, we weren't in a great space, and we had a big, beautiful house, so it was no big deal. If I wanted to go to bed, I'd go to bed. But there were 2 nights in a row where I just decided I'm not going to go to bed. I'm going to stay up and work. Let me give her some space. July the 30th, I'm on my way to bed, and I go into the room, and she says to me, "Get out of this room." And I'm like, "What do you mean, get out of this room?" She said, "I don't want you sleeping in here." And I'm like, "Okay, I've been out of the bed for 2 nights now. I'm going to bed tonight." And she says to me, "No, you're not getting in this bed. And if you don't leave this room, I'm going to call the police on you."
Wow.
I'm thinking to myself, what? And again, I'm talking to a group of people. I know I appreciate your audience, and I appreciate, again, you giving me this platform to talk. People like to say, we don't know this guy. But like I said, the people who know me best know me best. And I hope that the people who are listening will be able to relate. Some people will be able to relate to how bizarre some things in life can be, because this was truly bizarre for me. So she said to me, "If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police." And I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Now, one of the things that I've talked about a little bit through a couple of my videos is that my wife is a white woman. My ex-wife is a white woman. That for many people says it all. That for me doesn't say it all. That to me is like,
Completely
yeah, I know.
subjective. That point where there is a white woman, and it's completely subjective because people like to just have conversation in a very simple way.
Yes.
But we're talking
Yeah.
here about behaviors.
Yes. Yeah, we are. And I've known many women of different backgrounds to call
Yeah.
the police on folks.
It makes no
Now,
difference, yes.
I know that white women in particular, especially when it comes to black men, have done this many times, have caused a lot of problems. Never thought that I was married to a white woman like that. So this is when stuff started getting bizarre. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing there in the bedroom and I'm still like, wait a minute, you're going to call the police? And she says, yes, I'm going to call the police. Pablo, nothing had ever been said between us like that before.
Wow.
Nothing. Nothing. And I'll have to tell you some about my relationship with my wife because she and I did racial justice stuff. We did social justice stuff. We did all of this stuff together. Environmental justice stuff. We did all of this stuff together. And from what my understanding is that we were both very clear that that was not something that you say in our relationship. That is not something that will even be needed in our relationship. That we were going to hold one another a particular kind of way. That was not something that we needed. So she decides she's going to call her mother. How do I know it's her mother? Because she's standing pretty close to me. She dials, and I see the word mom come up, or I think her mom's name come up. And I'm like, okay, well, I better call somebody because this is getting really weird. And
Mm-hmm.
I immediately call a friend of mine. Her mother doesn't answer the phone, but my friend does answer the phone. And I say to my friend, hey, I need you to listen to this because something ain't right here.
Yeah.
And my wife knows our common friend. She's more of my friend than she is my wife, but she knows her. And I say, hey, I need you to listen to this. Something's wrong. My wife takes my phone from me and yells into my phone, if he doesn't leave this room, I'm going to call the police on him. And my friend says, why would you call the police on him? My friend is a black woman. Why would you call the police on him? And my wife says, because the other day he got into the bed, pulled my hair, and tried to choke me. I'm stunned, Pablo. I'm like, wait a minute, what? What did you just say? And I think I said that. What did you just say? And she said, you heard me the other day. You got into the bed, pulled my hair, and tried to choke me. And my friend says, are you sure? And she says, my wife says, yes, I'm sure. He may not remember, but because he had his back turned or something that was so contrived. I'm like, okay, I don't know what this story is, but this story ain't making no sense. And my friend said to me, she calls me Butch. She says, Butch, I want you to leave the room. She doesn't sound well. I took the phone and I left the room. I immediately went downstairs. This is about 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night on Friday the 30th of July 2021. I go downstairs and I call a good friend of mine who had just been in our house a few days earlier. And I called him and I said, hey, man, I don't know what's going on here, but she just got through saying something absolutely ridiculous that didn't happen. And I told him what she said. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, we were just there. He said, what happened? I said, I don't know what happened.
Mm.
He had been visiting with us from the 23rd, the previous Friday, until the 27th. He left on the 27th. So I told him, I said, I need to do something because she just threatened to call the police. I sat down, Pablo, and I wrote an email to about 12 people. I wrote an email and I said to a few people who live nearby, I said, if you please come by, I'd appreciate it. I don't know what's going on. Please come by. So I wrote an email. I explained to them what happened. And one of my friends drove by and he let me know that he was driving by. And I told him everything is okay. You can keep going. And by then, my oldest daughter had come home. My oldest daughter was 21 at the time, and she was living in the house with me. Now, my ex-wife and I don't share children. So my 21-year-old is my child, her stepchild. I explained to my daughter what happened. And I said, at first I was thinking, maybe we should just stay out of the house for the night. And then I thought, no, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just, go back to where I was sleeping. And I told my daughter to go to her room, which she did. The next morning, my daughter gets up and she's attempting to talk to my wife.
Mm.
And my wife refuses to talk to her. Now, this is a 21-year-old trying to talk to someone in her early 50s, and my wife ain't having it for some reason. She don't want to talk. And when I say bizarre, I mean this is just like this is a new person altogether for me. Now I want to throw one other thing in here. In the 2 weeks leading up to this, she had been sharing stories with me from the internet, articles rather from the internet regarding uh, menopause, perimenopause, and this condition may not be the right word. I have to use that word, but a condition that some women experience known as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. And I was reading all this stuff, and she sent me one that asked the question. I think I sent these texts to you. The question of will your marriage survive divorce?
Mm.
That was one of the articles that was sent to me. So I'm reading all of this stuff, and I'm thinking, I certainly appreciate me and you being on the same page regarding understanding what you might be going through. And I've read enough about menopause that's a monster for some women. So I'm reading this stuff. So when this thing begins to happen on the 31st, my mind immediately goes back to these articles that I've been reading. I'm thinking, oh wow, here comes that thing that she was talking about. But if she were to call the police, they ain't trying to hear that, because she's not going to say to them, I'm going through menopause. I'm going through whatever I'm going through. That's not what's going to happen. And they ain't trying to hear it. And as a man who experienced what I experienced with my mother and father, there's a part of me that would expect the police to do their job if they thought that there was something wrong, right? It would make sense to me. The police were coming to my house all the time when I was a child. So at some point early afternoon, my wife departs and she just goes. She says, I'm going out for the day. The day became the night. We're texting one another. And at some point, I'm really checking in with her. I'm like, are you okay? What's going on? Are you okay? I remember at one point, it started to sound like, and this is just through text, because she refused to answer the phone. Refused to answer the phone. Saturday, July 31st, 2021. Just would not answer the phone, but would text. At some point, I write to her and I said, do you remember what you said the other day about me choking you? I said, that didn't happen. You need to clear that up. And I should mention also, my daughter was talking to her and she threatened to call the police on my daughter. Mm. Now, again, people don't know me and they don't know my children, but the people closest to me know me and they know my children. And they know that I don't tolerate disrespect out of my children. And they know that I would not allow my children to speak to anyone with disrespect, any adult with disrespect. So for her, and she had known my daughter for well over 3 years, for her to turn to my daughter and say that she was going to call the police on her, I'm thinking, okay, this is way out of hand. So one of my texts to her was, look, you need to take back what you said. You need to take back the fact that I did not at any point choke you or pull your hair. And her text becomes staccato. Like every now and then she'll respond and, a couple hours to go by and then she'll respond to something and just kind of in and out. And Pablo, I started thinking something is really, really off here. Something is really off. And a day or two goes by and there were so many texts in there that I don't remember them all offhand. I just remember that at some point it comes to me that she has filed for divorce through a text. I learned that she's filed for divorce. Now, I still don't have any paperwork. And I'm still thinking that this is menopause stuff. And I'm still thinking that we are in a bizarre minute and she's going to come out of this any minute now. But then I see that in a text, she says she filed for divorce. And I'm tripping. I'm like, no, you didn't. one of our things, our mantra, and this is one of the things I'll be talking a lot about in the future. Our mantra was divorce is not an option. That was one of the things that we stood on. That was our marriage was divorce is not an option. So you mean to tell me you filed for divorce? So the texts become really, really telling after a while. And at some point on the 3rd, I think it was the 3rd of August, she writes to me and she says, "What's your plan for leaving?
Mm.
What's your plan for leaving?" I mean, what do you mean? What's my plan for leaving? We haven't had any conversation about anything. What are you talking about here? And then another text says, "You need to make plans to leave as soon as possible."
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. You
Crazy.
need to make plans to leave as soon as possible. And I'm writing, I am not going anywhere. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere.
Now, I was gonna say, Ulysses, because I read the text that you sent me, and
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, man. Because I'm telling you, I went through the text and I did my little, I tried to connect all the dots, and of course, there was a lot of things going on there that I was picking up from the beginning,
Right. Right.
right? And for some folks, they think that red flags are something that they can just pick up right away, but it's not. If you're in, I like to call this being in the middle of a hypnotic state. Let's call it
Yes.
that way.
Yeah.
You're going through this, you're going through all this going on, and this is before even the police come in. When you sent me the text and I was reading the text, right? I picked up the red flags right away in the first two texts. However, you weren't involved in a relationship. Of course, there's emotional interactions.
Right.
So there's a couple things that maybe you at the moment you couldn't picked up, right? However, for some folks that are out there saying like, "Oh yes, I'm gonna pick up all these red flags and I'm gonna just
Right.
tackle
Right.
them."
Right.
That's not how it is. Am I right?
Absolutely. And one of the notes that I made, red flags aren't the same for everybody. And so, what is in some relationships possibly some relationships have a high energy level that other relationships just could not tolerate. They're things that people would do that are good for them, good for the homeostasis of that relationship, where if you replaced one of them with somebody else, that person that's left over, the new person is like, no, those are red flags. Well, the
Mm.
previous person was like, oh, no, that's just how we got down. That's just how we did our thing. And that's what held us together. So when I think about um, the idea of red flags, hindsight, of course, is 2020, as they say. I can go back and I can look at the text and I can go, okay, okay,
Exactly.
okay. I can go back over the whole relationship and call everything a red flag.
Yeah.
Some people would say that her being with a black guy was a red flag. Some people would say that me being with a white woman was a red flag. Some people would say that her being from this place is, you know, and some people would say that it's not just about race, uh, culture, and there's a difference. It's not just about religion. It's not. Some of the things are deeper. Some of the things are, how does a person respond in an argument? What does a person do when this? How does a person, deal with their phone? Are they hiding? Do they take off? Do they, some of those things you could look at and you could go, okay, that's a red flag. But then somebody else, like I said, will look and go, no, that's what we do. So one of my things, I saw so much fighting when I was little that I have a tolerance level
Very high.
for arguing. I will step away. And I don't mean like step off and leave the relationship. I will, before the yelling gets too much, before somebody slams a door or a cabinet or something like that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go over a friend's house. To somebody else, that's a red flag. And I'm like, okay, I get it. So there's no one size fits all flag for everybody. But I will say you gotta do your best to figure out what is dangerous to a relationship. What is really dangerous to a relationship?
Well,
because a relationship is made up of two people. And like my parents, when I look at my parents, I could see their red flags. I
mm-hmm.
kind of was like, okay, I see where this is going, right? But somehow or another, they wound up staying together to their detriment.
Yeah.
I did not want to do that. And so my behavior was when this happens, step away from the house.
Yep.
I'm sorry, were you going to ask me something?
Yes, I was gonna say that. Um, in order for you to see the red flags, right, and this is what happens to you, you detach yourself from the situation. Probably a couple
Yes.
months went by, then you went back to the information that you already had in hand, and then
Right.
that's when you started seeing like, oh, okay, this was a red flag, or this was a red flag, and tell me if I'm wrong. And this is something that I learned again because I used to do pickup. I used to do day game and night game and text game, right? I was bad in all three. I was very bad at all three. However, there was a couple things that were very interesting. It was the texting, right? And before you get more into what happened when you got it with the cops and everything, you met them, and you went, back and forth with them. The the changes, the way she will respond to some of the texts were kind of telling. For example, you wanna say a couple things, some concerns about the relationship, and all of a sudden she will send you like a butterfly video.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Right.
that alone, of course, is a unbalanced change of emotional support, right? And that alone, for me, right, for me especially, what that's huge red flag. I'm talking about that level red flag. I'm talking about World War III red flags kind of level, right? However, you being inside a relationship, you couldn't pick up those things again because there was an emotional attachment to these things, right? So when we are in that emotional attachment, we cannot identify those things because we're blind by love, kind of thing, right? I'm not saying you were, right? That's the easiest way for me to say it.
I understand.
Now,
I understand.
where when you were going through all this back and forward, and she was sending you these kind of texts, and she was responding you with those texts, what was really going through your mind when she will respond in that kind of manner?
And I know the audience doesn't have the benefit. And at some point, Pablo, maybe you and I can do another one of these and we can get into the
Yes.
text.
Yeah.
But by the time she started texting that way with that high energy, she had already left the house.
Okay.
And so July the 31st, her leaving was major. I was, that put me on high alert. So everything from from July 30th, when she made the false accusation that I had tried to choke her and pulled her hair, from that time, I was on high alert because the next day she got up and she left. So
Mm.
for the next 5 days, I was on high alert. Now, again, just one more time, pointing to the text that people can't see. If you go back to the 15th, which is just 2 weeks earlier, in those texts, she's writing to me saying that she loves spending the night with me.
Yeah.
She loves sharing a bed with me every night. That she's grateful to be with me. She loves the way I take care of her. This is just 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks earlier. So from July 15th, 14th, 15th to the 30th, a 2 week period of time, we're divorcing now. So when I talk about flipping the switch from green light to red light, it happened abruptly, at least in my eyes. Now, was this some form of manipulation for a 2 week period of time? Was this the setup time? And then she had it all figured out, which is when she decided, I'm going to make this false accusation right here, right now. Now, I'll have to say this also for the audience. She made the accusation on July the 30th to my face in our bedroom. She filed the PFA on August the 4th, 2021. On the PFA, she writes that this incident happened on July 24th. So if this happened on July 24th, which was a Saturday, a question could be asked, why did you wait so long to file it? And why did you say something to him on the 30th if this happened July 24th? And so, again, I'm going back and I'm looking at these things, and I've looked at these so much now that some of the stuff I just know by heart. And I know that there's such great inconsistency. But I was out of the house on August the 4th. I'm out of the house on August the 4th. So I have no way of talking to her from the 31st when she left to the 4th when I was evicted. There was no verbal communication between us. There were texts. And then finally, on the afternoon of August the 4th, the state troopers show up.
That's the video.
And I didn't know that she had actually filed for the divorce. I had no real indication until early August the 4th when I was going through my email and I saw that her lawyer had sent me a document via email. Early in the morning, August the 4th, I open up my email and I see that he has sent me something. Now I've got verification. And then on August the 4th, 45 minutes to an hour before the state troopers show up, a courier shows up and hands me divorce documents, physical divorce documents. 45 minutes to an hour. So it's set up in a way where the state troopers know to come because the courier has come. I've received divorce documents, and an hour or so later, I'm being served with a PFA. I'm like, okay, I've been totally set up here.
It was a very well meticulous
It
process.
was meticulous, and in the end, I'm going to say it was arrogant, hubristic, stupid, because it was very short-sighted. Because there was this belief, I guess, that we got them. And with all due respect to the people who thought that they got me, the games are just beginning. The games are now just beginning. And I want to get to some of that. Did you have any other questions for me about right in here?
I have a bunch of questions here now. Now, when after you got kicked out of the house, right?
I did. Yep.
Right. When did you start seeing those big red flags? Like I said, the state trooper came to your house, tell you have to be out. This is you recording the video in the car.
Right.
I'm guessing you're going back to the text. You're trying to figure out when did they start it. What was the first, let's say, moment that just gave you that click of, okay, I didn't see this coming. This is when it started.
It really, the PFA is what really let me know, not even the divorce documents, but the PFA is what let me know that this was a setup.
Oh, okay.
Because on the PFA, I'm reading where it says, I actually still have the document around here somewhere. I'm keeping it all. The PFA lists that the story that she writes about how this happened on July 24th. I'm being served on August the 4th. But on this document, it says that this happened July the 24th. And the divorce, which we had said they would we aren't divorcing. So the divorce was filed for on the 29th or the 30th. So she made this claim of me choking her after she had filed for divorce. I didn't get the documents until early August the 4th via email in the afternoon in my hand. But they had been filed before she made the claim to my face that I had tried to choke her and pulled her hair. So that to me is like, oh, now I look back and I go, okay, so you decided to say this as part of the theater that you've created.
Mm-hmm.
You've created a show. Oh, I get it now. You filed for divorce. You want me out of the room. I don't know that you filed for divorce, but I'm going to find out soon. And you're going to say that I choked you because you're going to need to say that in order to have me evicted next week. Oh, clever girl. Clever. Very clever. I just need to say one other thing before I go
Yeah.
on, because I think this is the place where it really hurt what she did. In October 2018, we had known each other 2018. Our love affair was fire early on. You know, it was like we were doing all kinds of things together. We met on Martin Luther King's birthday. We wound up getting married on Martin Luther King's birthday. Again, we were, at least I thought we were racial justice down, social justice down, environmental justice down. We were down together. In October 2018, I shot a video for an online platform called Heart Threads. And it was in October 2018. October is not only Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but it's also the birth month of my mother. She was born October the 13th. Went down to DC and shot this video, and it went viral. And what was the video all about? The video was all about me reconciling with my father before he passed away, the same father who killed my mother. In the studio, I'm sitting there in the studio with she wasn't my wife at the time, but I'm sitting there with her and recording this whole thing and telling this story. And every now and then I look off camera and I see her, and she's, you know, happy, and we're in our element. That video goes viral. And I know, at least I'd like to believe, that I wanted to believe that she had more respect for me, my family, my mother, my father, my children, and everything that happened to me. She had more respect than to, of all things, accuse me of choking her and pulling her hair. And all of my friends said, anybody who knows you well. And there's some people, Pablo, who know me like really well. They know what ticks me off, and they know the boundaries that I push, and they know the things I won't do. And they know putting my hands on a woman ain't one of them. It ain't one of them. But for her to use that was absolutely disgusting and disrespectful to me. A total disregard for the way that I've lived my life for myself and for my mother and for my children and even for my father to an extent. Absolutely disgusting. And so when I was served with a PFA, protection from abuse, and then to see what she wrote, I'm thinking, wow, either she has really had a nervous breakdown, or she has fooled me really well.
Mm. Now, I was going to ask you, and these are more inside baseball kind of questions to see what kind of patterns it could have been, you know, saw from far away that maybe can help other folks to understand, right? It's not
Yeah.
something definitive, but at
Yes.
least recognizable. Now, how, were she married before she met you? Like, did
Yes.
she have
Yes.
any divorce?
Yeah. She was married one time.
One time.
Yep.
So basically, you know how this statistic goes. You know, persons that married the second time, there's a 65%, I think, of
Yep.
divorce. Now,
Yep.
her mom was married or divorced?
Married,
Married.
I believe, to the same guy, and consider our ages when we're talking about this. And I just mean this from the standpoint of I hear a lot about modern women, and I don't want to go into that too much, but I will say that uh, her mom is upper 70s,
All right.
80, and came from a generation where people were more likely to stay
Stay
together
together. Yeah.
than our generations.
Yeah.
Our generations are like, we're convenience stores for the most part. You just stop in, grab what you need, and then you leave.
Yeah. And also the
But to
there.
be fair, I want to speak to my side of that too, because people
Yes.
could ask the question, "What
Yeah.
about you?" She was my third wife.
Okay.
I got married really young when I was in the military, and divorced. I married a second time. I married a second time to a wonderful woman, an absolutely wonderful woman, a great mom. And we just knew that we were not it. She had four of my beautiful children, Pablo, and we just knew that we were just not it. She was the most supportive person when all of this stuff happened. That second wife of mine was the most supportive she could be. And so marriage on one hand didn't work for us, but friendship and responsibility and accountability to our children, you can't beat our
Mm-hmm.
teamwork. And I think that that's an important point to make here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's good. The fact that you guys still have a good relationship for the kids, most importantly, that's that's a win-win. That's a
Yes, it
win-win.
is.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
when I was going through the text, Ulysses. By the way, my new boy, I was gonna name him Ulysses.
No way.
Yeah, because of Ulysses Grant is my favorite president.
All right.
So I was gonna name him. Still gonna name him Ulysses. So, and it's very interesting that your first name is Ulysses.
And my middle name is Grant.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
really?
man.
Really? Is it
I
because of
took a
the
lot of
president?
yeah, I took a
Yeah.
lot of heat from that, man. But I prefer the Ulysses of the Odyssey.
Mm.
I look at my life as quite the journey,
Yeah.
and there was a time where I couldn't stand the name because it was my father's name.
Yeah.
But reclaiming my name
It's
has
important.
been crucial many times in my life. I'm
Hmm.
glad that I reclaimed my name. It's mine.
Good. 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 Let's go into a more serious note, right?
Hmm.
Now, for folks that are going through something similar for you, right?
Yes.
Would you say that she did you feel like she was setting things up prior to the result of just kicking you out? Because when you send me those texts, right, I
Yes.
can tell that she sent you these articles, all these stuff, right? For me, already out of the get go, it is a chat test. It's basically she's trying to make you part of her own world, kind of thing. Read this, and it seems more like she was trying to tell you these things up front, so when it happens to me later, remember the article that I sent you. That's why I'm doing this. So it's basically a way of her taking accountability out of the equation for
Yep.
her, you know, for you to accept her actions because of. And
Yes.
and when I saw those texts like that, and interesting enough, I don't know if you pick up this. It was always after you saying, expressing some concerns, right? The fact that this person was sending you a different text, again, I don't know this person, right? I'm just
Yes, I understand. Yep.
basing everything in just the data that I have in front of me. It seems like a tactic that is used in narcissism a lot,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
For those folks that don't understand, right? Even this happens a lot with relationship with parents and kids, right? Sometimes
Right.
there's some
That's
parents that are
correct.
very narcissistic,
Yep.
and they want to call the kids and just talk about their life and only their life,
Right.
and they tend to do this a lot. However, in a relationship, it's a different monster. If I'm telling you, Ulysses, I have some concerns in my relationship, I'm expressing this relationship, these concerns, I'm sorry, because I do care about the relationship, and all of a sudden I reply you with a cake. Okay, there's something going on that at the moment, I don't know if you picked it up.
No, man. And because the reality was that there were things that I understood through conversation with her. And this was before that crucial 4 week period of time. There were things that I witnessed with her where I would see that she would have a breakdown of a particular type. You know, I don't ever want to discount the debilitating power of menopause for women, or some of those very real, scientifically documented experiences that women can have. So I'm going to put that over here. But what I'm going to bring back over here is that there are people who know how to use that stuff to their advantage. There are
Yeah.
people who will use that stuff as an excuse. So I go back to my father now. The fact that he would walk into the door and say, I had to do it, she was going to leave us. How stupid is that? What, you shot her, she's leaving us now. And so I'm bringing that up because it's a form of manipulation. It was like, I had no choice. Yeah, you actually did have a choice.
Yeah.
Just as my wife has to be accountable to the things that we agreed to be accountable, to have shared accountability for. So you don't get to bring me a cake when I ask you about a bill.
Yeah.
You don't get to bring me a cake when I ask you about something related to our relationship. Don't give me something else. Answer the question that I'm asking. And so for people who are in these situations, people who might think that they're in these situations, you've already said one of the things. And I said this too. I think sometimes you do have to step back and detach, and you got to figure out, give yourself some distance and figure out, what am I seeing okay? But I'll say one other thing that I think is as important. While your friends and family and community cannot be, and to an extent should not be, part of your relationship on one level, there's another way that they should never not be a part of it.
Okay.
You should never be so isolated within a relationship that you can't talk to other people, that you don't have people close enough to you who understand. We were married in a community ceremony. And by inviting the community, our friends, family, into the wedding, they said that they would take some responsibility for it. This is not unusual for a community, friends, and family to say, we're here as witnesses and we are going to support this relationship. So when my wife did what she did, a lot of people were very upset with her and remain upset with her because they
Stab
were
in the
like,
back. It was like stab in the back to the community.
it was a stab in the back because you called us in to witness the union, but you never said anything to us as you were getting ready to leave. And then when we called you, and many of them called her and said, hey, what's going on? Can we help? She never answered. So it was never just about me. If I did something wrong, call my sister, call my brother, call my uncle, call my best friend, call somebody. But for you just to decide to disappear, to me, again, it's a hindsight red flag, but it says a lot. If you don't have the courage to come forward and explain your behavior when you were coming forward, when you needed things from these same people, then everybody's going to question, what were you doing? You were using us, huh? So you were coming into this environment to get something from us.
Would you say now that you're out of this environment that my this is this is just an opinion, right?
Sure.
That she was probably setting up certain things to just get a result at the end?
Very much so. So I think I hear people use terms like high value man, high value woman.
We don't have to even. We don't even
I
have to
just I
go
just
there.
want to say something
Yeah.
about. I just want to put it in context for people who are
Yeah.
used to hearing those types of terms.
Okay.
Anybody who looks at my resume, they look at the things that I've done just over the last couple of years. I said this to you, Pablo. I like to play big, and one of the things that I did in the time that I was married is I facilitated the official apology for what is known as the Philadelphia Move bombing. It was a bombing that happened in 1985, West Philadelphia, um, where a C4 bomb was dropped on a row home. It wound up killing 11 people on the inside, including 5 children. It was a national, international disaster. Left 260 people homeless. That happened in 1985. I was still in Chicago when it happened, but I was asked, because of the skill set that I have, to conduct a reconciliation process. And that reconciliation process was a very high profile process, and it wound up, um, it wound up, excuse me, leading to, um, it wound up leading to an official apology. I wrote the apology and handed it to city council and said, this is what the apology should look like. Because my wife was with me at the time and did some work, I was able to make it where her name was put on that apology as well. There are a couple other things that I could mention that I did, and she was with me. And so she was part of the things that I initiated. One of the things that I'm working on right now is to get a courthouse not far from where I live named after a black boy who was falsely accused back in 1931, falsely accused of killing a white woman. His name is Alexander McClay Williams. Before Emmett Till, before George Stinney, Alexander McClay Williams was accused of killing a white woman. At the age of 16, he was electrocuted. I am the person right now who is forwarding this the mission to have his name, a black boy's name, put on the courthouse. It's never been done. I'd like to believe I'm effective. I'd like to believe that I get stuff done, and I believe that what she saw was, wow, this guy gets stuff done, and I'm gonna hitch my wagon to this guy. That's not what it felt like when I was going through it. It felt like I had a great woman who was very supportive, who was helping me, helping the community, helping forward some social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, helping to forward these things. And now I feel like, okay, you got what you wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
now you're gone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the game we playing.
Mm-hmm. You know, the interesting, if back in the day, right? If I have a female that it will be like a foot forward for just social justice stuff, for me it will be a huge red flag. Huge red flag. Why is that? Because I don't know her in real intentions.
It's interesting. So many
Yep.
people have said that,
Yeah. And
Pablo.
let me say why, right? Because usually if we really want to go deep into the difference between the man and the woman, guys are the one truly the ones that want to fix problems. We want to get things done. If there's some injustice in one area, we want to put an end to things, right? However, what I notice is in when it comes down to females, justice warriors, all stuff, they just don't want to fix things. They just want to just endless victimhood, weird stuff, like the text that she sent you with all that stuff. For me, that what I would expect for someone like that, right? And if a female will come down to saying all these stuff, of course, and they're probably communists as well, Marxic, all that stuff. Not all of them, of course, but there's a high probability that they would kind of come with that because of the influence behind that, right? Because for a man thinking about injustice and all these things, it comes from a very different inspiration. It comes down to I want to make some changes, right? However, from a female perspective, I don't know if they really want to change things or they just want to complain and just be the victim, even inside their own relationship. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And like I said, there were people who cautioned me for a lot of different reasons about her involvement, her intentions, and
Mm.
she didn't come to the table, however, with no, she didn't come to the table without experience. She came to the table as a researcher. She came to the table as a um, an author of books on cultural safety. She came to the table with what looked like solid evidence of not just concern, but action. And so when I think about how she got involved with me, it she knew how to talk the language, and a lot of people do know how to speak the language. And when I would do certain things, she was there. Um, she knew how to follow.
Hmm.
She knew how to lead in some cases, but looking for a partner. I should say I wasn't even looking for a partner when she showed up. She just kind of showed up, and things kind of worked as we started spending more time together. And before you knew it, man, we were caught up in a whirlwind of activity, not just social activity, but together. We were doing all kinds of things together, talking about writing books together, talking about doing presentations and workshops together. We had put together a number of really good projects. And to me, it felt good because this was also my lover. So hindsight is everything in this case, but this is why I'm sharing this conversation. This is what it is. I do want to at some point go back to the false allegation because to me it's a very important thing that I want people to understand. If they don't get anything else out of this, I want people to understand what I think the intent of a false allegation would be.
Hmm. Go ahead.
And so the first thing that I recognized was going on was that I was being discredited. That it was like this protection from abuse was being labeled on me. So no matter what people thought they knew of me, that there was going to now be this doubt about who this guy is. All this time we've seen him do all these other things, and we know he's talked about domestic abuse, but you know his father was an abuser, right? You know his father accused. So for me, again, it was disgusting. But that's what the allegation is designed to do, is to discredit you. It's also designed to destabilize you. And the discrediting you is a form of destabilizing you, but it's a way of kind of like taking you out of your zone and being able to do the things that help you to continue to build your life. Because now you got this other thing to worry about. It's a very personal thing that is going to impact your reputation, which is going to impact your business, which is going to impact your family life. So now you've been discredited, you've been destabilized, you've been defamed. And because it comes the way that this one did, you're left defenseless. You are left in a way having to defend something that didn't happen. So it's like a mind game. You're having to, as many people have written to me, yeah, you wind up being guilty until proven innocent. And I don't care if you're a passport bro. I don't care if you're married or not. I don't care how much money you have. And none of these things matter with a false allegation. A false allegation can be thrown at anybody. You don't have to be married to have somebody throw a false allegation against you. And so I think that people need to be concerned about this going forward. It can come from anywhere, from anybody at any time. And false allegations, one of the things that I'm pushing, and I feel the momentum building. People who make false allegations need to be prosecuted.
100%.
And so if you can take me into court and you can prove that I did what you said I did, then I need to be prosecuted. I mean, I'm sorry, I need to be punished, right? But if you can't prove it, you need to be punished. If unless you come in there with some solid evidence that somebody did something to you, you need to be punished.
Eh,
And the judge in our case um, found her allegations, they were unfounded. It was like, I don't see nothing. There's
Interesting.
nothing here.
And I was gonna
Yeah, there's
ask
nothing
you,
here.
can you explain what was the process in the
So here in
courthouse?
Pennsylvania, yeah, here in Pennsylvania, I was evicted from my home on August the 4th, which was a Thursday. Was that a Thursday or was it Wednesday? Wednesday, I think it was actually. I think it was a Wednesday. A Wednesday. And the 5th was a Thursday, but I had to wait a whole week to go to court. So I was immediately removed from the house pending court. Now, even though it was unfounded, before I went to court, I had a couple of attorneys and they couldn't make it on that date. And I was like, look, I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm not waiting. I'm not asking for a continuance. I'm going in there and I'm going to defend myself. So I put some paperwork together. And the only way that I was mostly outmatched is that I didn't, I don't know how to sustain or, object. And yeah,
or
yeah.
let's call it the techniques and all that
Nah, I
stuff.
don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
like to object is essentially to tell somebody to shut up talking.
yeah.
When a lawyer says make them stop talking. I didn't know that, so her lawyer would ramble on and on. But in the end, I knew that you gotta really say something smart to get somebody to believe that I've done something wrong. And I was able to convince the judge that I've done nothing wrong. However, a friend of mine told me before I went in, a lawyer friend of mine told me before I went in, if they dismiss this, do not go back to the house with that woman
Mm.
because that woman will fall down the stairs and say you pushed her. That woman will bang her head into a wall and say you pushed her. That woman will self harm and say you did it. That's some scary stuff, man.
Very scary.
That's some scary stuff. And the
That
amount of men in particular,
yeah.
again, I know that this happens to women, but the amount of men who I've been in contact with over these last few weeks who have said that this has happened to them. See, people expect for men to be physical. When it comes to abuse, people are always, talking about toxic masculinity and bullying and pushing but what they don't have a similar respect for is the tongue of a woman
Hmm.
and her ability to say something that is stereotypic. It's very stereotypic. It's he did this to me, or he said this to me. He put me down. The mouth is as dangerous as the hands in many cases.
Now, would you say that them saying toxic masculinity is just a projection of their own toxicity? Does that make sense?
It does. I heard somebody talking about the idea of toxic masculinity, and the two things don't even go
It
together,
doesn't even
actually.
make sense.
It
Be-
doesn't even make sense.
Now, what I was gonna say is, would you think, right? This is me, of course, just assuming things, right? This is not something that happened. Her lawyer telling
Yes.
her, text him. In order for us to win this case, make sure he's close to your house. Make sure that you guys drink a coffee or something. Would that be a scenario that was presented in your case?
I believe anything is possible when I go back and I look at the text and I look at some of the answers, some of the random answers that she gave me. I would say one thing, I would text and write one thing, and then she would text something entirely different. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, wait, that's not that wasn't the question. And okay, why are you writing that? And when I sat with my attorney and showed her the text thread, she said, "Yep, here she is trying to set it up. This is
Yep.
her trying to set the whole thing up." Um, And it was so good to have somebody who was not emotionally invested in the situation and able to look at it as a lawyer, but as just a person who ain't tied to this person. Because beside of the emotional investment I had with her, I did have a financial investment with her. I did have what I thought was a spiritual investment in her. I thought that that was the deepest part of the relationship. So I was invested physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. I was invested. She wasn't. And so to have somebody look at the text messages and say, look, I know what you all were probably going through, what you thought you were going through, but I can see right now where her agenda has shifted. These texts are showing me that she's got a shifted agenda. She's been gone now for 4 days. She's starting to set this thing up. You got to make a move.
Mm.
When she wrote to me and said, what is your plan to leave the house? Pablo, we hadn't talked about anything about me leaving the house.
She's
There was,
assuming that you guys already spoke about it in the text.
and I'm wondering also if, like you said, was her lawyer saying, pardon me, was her lawyer informing her about what to say? Is it possible that she was sitting right there with him doing this?
Possible.
Anything is possible. Anything is possible. What I do know is that the texts, when I go back and look at them now, still give me plenty of evidence for a lawsuit that I have filed. And while we are now short days from the finality of this, from the dissolution of this marriage, we got a long way to go in terms of a lawsuit that I filed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got to hit this one point one more time, because when we talk about the red flag thing, I really want to emphasize that no individual should ever disconnect from the community, friends, or family that they have come from, especially if it's a strong base of people. You want to be part of a strong base of people and not just a bunch of people who co-sign your BS.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be around people who are, some of them are skeptics, but they love you. Some of them are totally against what you're doing, but they love you. And then some people are fully supportive of what you're doing. But you want to know that if a prenup can't help you, that group of people can. If a prenup can't save you, that group of people can. And I come from that group of people. I come from a group of people who, as beat down as I felt, that group of people would not let me fall. And I'm a father. And because I'm a father, I knew that my children were watching how I was going to respond to this. And it was crucial for me to spend some time alone, crying, grieving, whatever that process was. It was important, but it was also important for my children to see, man, dad ain't standing for this. And so when this happened, people were saying, she must have forgot who you were. And they weren't saying that, to build me up or to help prop me up or anything. They know that I come from them, because when you attack me, you attack them too. And so this rebuild, this recalibration, as I call it, has been so much easier because I never disconnected from the system that I was a part of.
Were she trying to disconnect you from that community?
You hit on some of the things regarding narcissism earlier, and I try to be careful when it comes to that conversation, because again, people don't even know me. People will look at me and say, people have looked at me
Mm-hmm.
and said things like, you're talking too much. You're doing blah blah blah. And I'm like, nah, I'm doing what I always do. and you'll get to know me, and you'll see that this is what I always do. Um, so the question that you were asking though about, I'm sorry,
Were
Pablo.
you where was she trying to disconnect you from the
That's the
community?
question. Yeah, that's the thing, because this is what they say about narcissists is that they want to isolate you.
Yep.
They want to put you in a situation where you are at their beck and call, even if they are not at your beck and call. And I can look back now and I can see the difference between the community that I come from and the community that she comes from. I can see where when I would have to do something with other people and she didn't want to be a part of it, instead of just accepting that you don't want to be a part of it, it becomes me abandoning you. It becomes, what about me? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, this is who I was before we met, and I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to make some really qualitative adjustments for you, but we're going to have to figure out how to integrate all of this stuff, because it will never just to be about you. It's never just going to be about one person in this community. It's about all of us, and you are now part of a community. So you won't isolate me as much as you try to with, as you said earlier, with your cake. You're not going to isolate me. And no man or woman should ever live in isolation outside of the powerful system, community, friends, and family that they have.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Community, family, that's very important. It's a support
Yep.
system, right? If things go
Yes.
left sided, the family's there to just support you.
Absolutely. And again, I think marriages are stronger as part of a community,
Mm-hmm.
because
Agree.
you've got, when things begin to get tough, you want to be able to turn to some people who know you. If they're not there, who are you going to turn to? You turn to strangers. You turn to people you don't know, and
No, you don't want to do that.
the results there can be very, very different.
You're in a vulnerable situation. So
Yes.
those people that are
Yes.
strangers, they don't have um, your best intentions. So
That's correct.
now, you and I spoke on the phone, Ulysses, before we we did this small back and forward. Um, and you mentioned something that I was very intrigued by it. It's something that I always notice, and we notice it in the Amber Heard trial because it was the most well-known one. And you said something that it just literally summarized some of these actions. You call it the sexualization of the court
Mm-hmm.
or the justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Can
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
can you can you go deep into that? I would like you to just give me a synopsis or summarize this term for me. How did you come up with this term, and what made you come to this conclusion to just call it this way?
Well, I look at it not just through the Amber Heard situation. I think my understanding comes from Harper Lee's book To Kill a Mockingbird.
The Killer Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird. Um, and so when uh, Tom Robinson, the black guy, this is a 1950s movie. It's a great book. It's a great movie, I think, as well. Is in court. I believe her name is LMA Ewell. But Tom Robinson is a black man who is essentially accused of raping LMA Ewell. I believe that's her name. I know the last name is Ewell. Her father's name is Tom Ewell. When I was sitting in court, listening to, I'm looking to my right at my wife, and back then we used to have to wear masks in court. We weren't that far out of COVID where you didn't have to wear a mask. And again, I'm defending myself, and I could not have been less prepared for one aspect of that court situation. I had no idea that my wife was going to quadruple down, not double down, not triple down, but quadruple down on the accusation that she had made of me choking her and pulling her hair in the bedroom. In the bedroom. What do you do in the bedroom? what, you know, and when you look at it from a sexual racial standpoint, black men and white women are the taboo, the sexual taboo of all taboos, at least in this country. Why? Because people are always concerned about them having sex. It ain't none of your damn business on one hand, but because of the history of the country and the things that have happened between black men and white men, unfortunately, some of that has been murder, uh, false allegations, and all that kind of stuff. We look at the dynamic of this white woman and this black man strictly through sex. And so when people write to me and say, you had no business with her anyway, you actually did have business with her. But that business was perverted in a courtroom. And so now when people are looking at us on August the 12th, 2021, they see a 5'4" or 5" white woman, and they see a 6' black guy, and she's saying that he pulled my hair, tried to choke me. And I'm thinking, all I can think about is To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm like, I have just landed in the new version of To Kill a Mockingbird. Anybody listening to this woman would have to know that she is lying, just like LMA Ewell was lying. And Tom Robinson, who couldn't even use his left hand to choke her, he couldn't even lift his left hand, is being accused of something he didn't do. And I could just feel that sexualization as I'm going through this with her. Her attorney at one point, I remember him saying that he wanted to clear the courtroom because some of the stuff that we were going to talk about that day was sexually graphic. And I'm like, oh, really? News to me. We're going to talk about something sexually graphic? What in the world? What? Okay. Man, it was crazy.
Trying to play
It was
to the
absolutely
emotions.
crazy.
Just trying to play with the emotions of
The
the
emotions
court.
and the prejudices and
Yeah.
the historic discrimination and the historic taboo and all that kind of stuff. So when you talk about, and I was just watching the Depp Heard documentary yesterday. Some of it on I think it's Netflix that is on. That was one thing, but that was a white guy and a white woman. Very different than a black man who has been accused of abusing a white woman. Because abuse, uh, the collective thinking, the collective ignorance always goes to sex. It always goes to sex. Y'all just had a thing for one another. Y'all just wanted to, do that thing together. That's what people are thinking. And if they ain't thinking, they feeling it. It's almost an instinct that we have when we see black men and white women together. But Pablo, these are things that she and I had discussed. I thought that we had an understanding that that's what we were stepping into. We were going to step into that, not in a defensive way, but we were going to step into this with courage. Many people don't know it, but Martin Luther King, who spent time at Crozier Theological Seminary just outside of Philadelphia in the city of Chester, had given a lot of thought to marrying a white woman and was told, no, you better not do that, because to do that is to put you in a position where black folks are not going to take you seriously.
Interesting.
Uh,
Really.
her name was Betty Moitz. Betty Moitz was the white woman. So me and my wife, again, we talked about this stuff. We got married at the church where Martin Luther King spent his time when he was at the seminary. We got married there. And so what to me was deep and meaningful. Now I look back at it and I go, this was a total charade, huh? And then when we show up in court on the steps of Calvary Baptist Church in Chester, we are spiritually united. We show up to court and we are sexually exploited. It was sad, man. It was truly, truly sad.
Man. Yeah, I can tell there might be, again, red flags for a lot of folks are not as clear. Like I said, I can guarantee you coming now to a new relationship. I would imagine all this process from the beginning. You will be very, very diligent to make sure this doesn't go back to that.
Well, I'll certainly never encounter her again, you know. And so, and so, and I will say, if I didn't say this to you before, I want people to know that she had reached out to me many times after the PFA was lifted.
Wow, really?
Oh, within 2 months of the PFA being lifted, she saw me in public and said it was really good to see you.
Really?
2 months after it was lifted, it was almost like she couldn't wait for them to lift the PFA
I
for
heard
her to
about
send me a
that.
text.
Yeah, I heard about during a divorce. That's what they do. Like during the divorce process, what a lot of ex-wives would do, it would try to reach out to the husband, and that way the husband will come back, and for her to get more evidence and give it to the lawyer, all that stuff.
Well, well, she made some big mistakes during this period of time, and I think that this is why people need to be careful with who they play games with. I heard a guy say, "Play silly games, win silly prizes." I think there's something for that. You want to play silly games, you're going to win silly prizes. And I say to people, if this was just about me, Pablo, and what I had gone through, I probably would have tucked my tail and walked away. I presented her as my woman into a community, into a family, into friends, people who have given me all kinds of support, all kinds of credit, all kinds of resources. I presented her as, hey, this is her. And so for her to, a friend of mine says, uh, instead of coming back to us and explaining to us what happened, she decided to throw a Molotov cocktail on us. And if it were not for the support that they had given me, I feel like I owe. I really do. I feel like I owe my people uh, a different kind of ending to this situation, which is why I am sharing this tale. Um, Anybody wants to reach out to me, you can find me. My website is ulyssesbutchslaughter.com. You can email me there. I can share some things. As I said to you before, man, I've played on international stages in such a way that I am not so taken off guard by this that I don't have a response for it. I've been in communities where people have played really risky games, and I've had to mediate those games. As you said earlier, I had to broker those games. I was the one who set the boundaries and the rules for some really interesting games between people. So for her to try this with me, I just knew that she was having a nervous breakdown, man. I just felt like something is wrong here because you don't just do that to me and my people because we're not going to be happy. We're going to respond differently. If you've done this before to someone else, I think you've just crossed the line.
Now, when she wanted the divorce, she wanted like alimony, or she wanted something out of it, or she was just
Um,
wanted to divorce and period.
wanted the house, of course. Wanted the house and wanted the land. Um, wanted wanted me just to I guess go away so she could have all that and go on to whatever else the new plan was. And it I'd like to believe that if this was different, that we could have negotiated in a different way around this.
Yep.
There could have been a conversation about how we just kind of go our way. And really, if you just want to split, let's do it cleanly. But for you to attempt this sloppy, very, very sloppy exit, leaving all kinds of evidence of your sloppiness behind you, For you to do that demands a response that I hope will be an example to other people. I may not be able to tell people their specific red flags, about their specific red flags. I can give you some general stuff.
Yeah.
And I can also tell you about how to respond. If I can't help you prevent it, I can damn sure help you figure out how to respond. And this is one of those ways that I'm responding. Which is why, as I've said before, I could have started sharing that video a year ago. It just wasn't time. It wasn't time.
No,
I
that was
needed to.
that was basically what that was the amount of fear and red pill all stuff was going up a little bit because it was 2021, so you have Kevin Samuels,
Yep.
a lot of these folks that were coming up, but we were not in a mainstream stage.
Right.
Yeah, where
Right.
right now you have Dr. Phil, a lot of these people, even talking heads in the mainstream media, talking about even paternity fraud, marriage
Yes.
fraud, all these
Yes.
things, right?
Yes. Yes.
So even
Yes.
though if you presented this video early on, it will never have the same effect. Where now you even have people on X, not Twitter, right? X expressing and sharing, especially in conservative groups. That means that your situation is more common than it appears.
Yes, it is. And the messages that I'm getting from people make it clear to me that I am not an exception.
Yeah.
This is a particular kind of rule,
Yep.
right? And I've been in touch with the lead attorney and a few other
Yep.
people, and these are people who I'm glad to be in communication with. Um, there are. I wish this wasn't a. I wish people wouldn't make this a man versus woman thing. I wish there was a place of balance where this conversation could be had, so we could have some solidarity around integrity.
Yeah.
But I think some people just want to talk to get likes, subscribers,
Mm-hmm.
money. They want to do that thing. I'm not interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm interested in
Get it done.
I'm interested in justice and
Yeah.
liberation, man.
Yep.
You know, I'm interested in the highest forms of collective truth possible, not just some woman talking about this is her truth. Nah, your truth next to everybody else's truth ain't the same thing. You don't your delusion, your lie next to everybody else's collective truth is nothing. So when people say to me, well, there are two sides to every story, I say, first of all, there's more than two sides to every story. There are infinite sides to a story. That's what makes a story good, is that there are many perspectives. And so all it takes is one lie, one drop of a lie in the truth to contaminate it. And we got to get rid of the drops of lies in the pool of truth to make it pure again. We
Mm-hmm.
can't play this game of there are two sides to every story. Yeah, one of those sides could just be a flat out lie. And I'm glad that I waited because I'm feeling, just as you said that, I am feeling like, okay, whatever I learned, whatever I know, whatever ancestor was whispering in my ear just to wait, 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 be patient. I'm glad I listened
Mm-hmm.
because I believe now is the time
The
to
momentum.
introduce this story. Yep, to introduce this story into the world because there is a surge of new thinking around relationships, around the roles and responsibilities of men and women. Um, and I think I mentioned to you, I used to work with a corporation called One Taste. You can also find a documentary about One Taste on Netflix. And in that organization, I served as a reconciliation director. I created a reconciliation platform for an organization, a sex positive organization, international sex positive organization, where men and women were doing all kinds of stuff with one another. They played all kinds of games, and as a player, what's the term you used?
Ex-pickup artist. I'm not doing that anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
ex-pick as, but you know what I'm talking about
Hmm.
in that arena. But it was in that company where the leaders would talk about they wanted the world to become more 51% feminine and 49% masculine, that there was too much masculinity. And they tipped too far. That idea tipped too far, and they found themselves facing the FBI.
Mm.
And so when you tip too far one way or the other, you're going to be met with some resistance, and hopefully it's uh, a true justice form of resistance, and
Hmm.
not just some knee jerk, thing. And
Yeah.
so I think that this is where we are right now, where men are saying, "Hey, now you're pushing a little too far. You're
Mm.
going a little too far with this. It's time for us to come back to the center."
Yeah. I think, and this is, I think, comes. I'm sorry, comes down from the benevolent heart of the Western man. It's basically
Mm,
we really love justice. We really love, you know, fairness. I think we got it way too comfortable, past the 70s to the early 2000s, where we were like, okay, let's just give freedom or responsibility to certain areas that it was not needed, right? Because I think, when it comes down to this kind of problem, it didn't start 5 years ago. This is something that has been
no.
cultivated, let's
Yes.
say 1950, 1960, because we become a great nation. The westernized world becomes very comfortable to live in. So we want to try new things, all stuff, but we never thought about the consequences, or even close to these consequences. Now that we are in this position, we see how politics has been moved and how politicians are even passing laws, and even the conversations that we having doesn't even make sense, of course, because the momentum was started in a slow fashion, but now we're in full train speed. Now you want to put a brake on it. It's like, I mean, we had to slow down the train first.
I agree.
Yeah, we had to slow down the train first. We cannot pull the
Yeah.
brake, and thankfully, we have things moving a certain way. However, the feminist movement is very strong. It's very strong, even for the the better version of men, right? So I understand where the passport bros goes, the red pill, the man fee. I know where they're going for it, right? But it's time for us, I think, to just call politicians, talk to politicians about this. Really, I think Tennessee is doing a great job so far, starting doing a great job with paternity fraud, especially Memphis, and making sure that some of these kids, man, or some of these women, they're held accountable. Because for me, when I started just reacting to these videos, or even before that, about how common paternity fraud is in our institution, it's not even a question of arguments or conversations. It's just so evident in the fact that the system itself is not willing to do anything. That's the area that I'm like, okay, we have a lot of work to do here.
Pablo, I see paternity fraud in the same way that I see false allegations of abuse. It's a false allegation. Paternity fraud is a false allegation. Now, it's not um, quite the same thing as saying somebody abused you, but what it is it's abusing the system that allows truth to be discovered. It's the same system in many ways, where in this case, women can walk in and simply say something. All my ex-wife had to do was walk in and say something on a day where a particular judge was sitting. And I was talking with a colleague of mine about what they call court shopping or judge shopping, where a lawyer will wait for a particular judge to show up in a particular courtroom and then go in because may have a relationship, or there may be that person is more favorable to the outcome that they want. When you are manipulating the system in that kind of way, it's unfair. And when it's unfair, it's false. When you are saying somebody is the dad and they ain't, and making that person pay for something that they shouldn't be paying for, and I shouldn't say something, but someone, pardon me, but paying for the something as in the process for someone because you want to, the easy way out, and the easy way out is to point and say that person did it, it's that person's child, or that person did it, that person abused me. If all it takes is a finger point, we're
No.
in a lot of trouble. We got to
Yeah.
come away from the finger pointing and find a way to become very sure and clear about the decisions that we're making in legal spaces.
Yeah. That's completely truth. I think and talk more about there. I think when it comes down to female nature, I think there's a great taboo that we don't want to talk about it, but we think as females of being this eloquent image of angelism. Let me just make that stuff up, but it makes sense for me right now. Angelism meaning that they're they need protection at all costs, which I agree. I do agree. They need protection. This is important. That's why we built this system to make sure they have a house. If a dad abandoned the family, if the dad abandoned the family, they're protected. The dad is held accountable. All these things, right? However, a culture has changed where these things that used to protect them, right, now it's being used to weaponize the man.
Yeah, I mean
And
that term is good. That's a good term.
yeah,
The weaponization or to weaponize, uh, to almost use like in my case, the state troopers as mercenaries, to use the court as a weapon, um, to create an illusion of injustice in order to get an unjust end. You create the illusion of injustice to get an unjust end, and that's what's going on. Um, we have to hold people accountable for using the justice system for unjust ends.
I agree. And you mentioned that you want this kind of type of conversation. Here's what I noticed, Ulysses, from my perspective, and I'm gonna give you the statement. You tell me if you have noticed this. We guys, we start talking about these things, and all of a sudden we see female entering these spaces. I agree with that in a certain extent. The problem is with a lot of these type of conversations, right? Is that I have so many channels in my mind that I can just go and just mention, which I'm not gonna do, right? Because it's not fair for them. They're not here to defend themselves. However, what I notice is that we as men want to move forward to fix the problem. However, these kind of voices, right, are there to protect what they have right now. Why is that? It makes sense, right? It makes sense for them to protect what they have now and just make any excuses because they benefit from them. That means that they can just benefit from not being accountable for even their own action, even though they're not even committing that action. But knowing that you have that safety net at the end, even though you don't want to do that action, but if it happens, I know I have that safety net. Bringing female to the space to talk about this, from what I noticed, and I might be wrong here, it doesn't move the needle.
Well, since I started this campaign around false allegations, a number of women have reached out to me and they've essentially said, same thing happened to me. And this is why I keep drawing on my not just knowledge, but my experience of what happened to my mother. I know what happened. I was there when it happened to the most important woman of my life. So I understand that. And I was there to talk about what happened to my mom. I would go to domestic violence conferences and I would talk about it. And it was interesting. It's interesting that we've been talking about this, because I would go to domestic violence workshops and I would talk about the the book that I wrote, Dear Daddy, I Hate You.
Yeah.
Or I would talk about, I have a documentary I call To Hate,
Mm.
and it talks about my hatred for my father. And I would talk about these things. And many women, and I remember this clearly, would treat me like I didn't have a place in the conversation around domestic violence.
Interesting.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. I have a place here. I do have a place here. Domestic violence is not a woman's conversation. So
It's,
when we talked about Johnny Depp saying, yes, I was a victim of domestic violence. Domestic violence isn't just about the woman. The house isn't just about the woman. So when I started talking about the false allegations against men, and women started jumping in, saying, can, I be part of the conversation? And I'd be like, I want to talk to you, but I want to elevate this issue of false allegations against men.
mm-hmm.
And men need to step up to this conversation, and they need to say what women were saying when the Me Too movement was going on. The Me Too movement was about women. And
It was not about men. It was not about men.
It was not about men. And I know some men came in later and had something to say, and it's okay for the Me Too movement to be about women, right? It's
Agree.
okay.
Agree.
But it's okay for Stop Fam, or what I'm calling Stop False Allegations Against Men, to be about men. It's okay. It's not anti-women, it's pro-men. Me Too isn't anti-men, it's pro-women. So it does concern me when I see some women step into this conversation that is about men. Sure, we like the solidarity, we love the support, we love the advocacy, we love the awareness that we are hurting. But let us have a space where we can talk about these things to one another and organize around these things with one another.
Yep.
And do the work. Because for some reason, I was hit with a response by a lot of women thinking that I was asking for their help. And in this case, it was a lot of Black women thinking that I was asking for their help because I said something about my wife being white. And they totally misunderstood that. But they thought I was asking for Black women to come to my rescue and help me. I'm like, no, that's not what I was asking for.
But that's what they were. That's what they were hearing.
That's what they were hearing.
Yeah,
that's what they were hearing.
You were not even saying that, but that's what they were hearing.
But I think the part of it was that that's what they were conditioned to hear too. When I go back now and I listen to some of the female content creators and those who have positioned themselves as pro-Black, I always say to people, pro-Black should not mean anti-white or anti anything. Pro-Black is not anti anything. I'm not calling you into service. I'm not begging you to come save me because I messed up. You got it all wrong. Similarly, men are not calling for women to come and save them by having conversations about false allegations against men. We can work on this ourselves. We'll let you know what we need you to do if we need you to do anything. But this is a conversation that we're having, and that's okay.
And because they haven't done it either, and they're not gonna do it. And I think Kevin Samuels was very good with this point. He used to say, like, you're coming here for men. You know the problem the men are going through because of the feminism, but you're coming to us to go to the females and fix the problem. That's a problem that you guys have to fix. We have our own problem. That was Kevin Samuels.
Right.
And a lot of people have forgotten that what Kevin Samuels was good at it. He was very good at maintaining the conversation around men, and men are struggling. Even though I have a family, I'm gonna have my third kid, but I'm married, not through the state.
Right.
Yeah, I'm married privately. You know, my wife is gonna change her last name, all that stuff. I'm not married through the state, right? Because I understand these things. However, there's some 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 concerns when it comes down to other people not even having the information
Right.
to know what's going on. And I think it's not in our best interest, right, to have people or the female area to come to the conversation, because if they're not even doing it right now by themselves, what makes you think they can come to the space and fix the problem unless they want to talk about the problem but you men go and fix it,
Right. You know
which
what we're talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it makes it a slower process.
Right. Right. Which for me is a lot like the very basic conversation of it does take a man to raise a boy.
Ah, boy, yeah.
The very basic conversation of it takes a woman to raise a girl. Um, Men need to work together with other men to make stronger men. And if we look at a Venn diagram, that overlapping circle, those two circles where you've got a middle piece and you've got two separate circles, they come together. And there's a woman circle and there's a man circle, and they come together in the
Yeah.
middle, and there's something that happens in there, right? But over here, it's uniquely a man side, and over there, it's uniquely a woman side. And we're going to incubate and raise men and support men in the uniquely man side of the Venn diagram. And
Mm-hmm.
we expect women to do the
The
same
same
thing in
thing.
their side. And when we come together in that middle space, we'll be better for one another.
Yeah.
But we don't live in that space. We don't incubate in that space. We don't want the middle space to compensate for what the main space should do. And as you and I are sitting here right now in the man side of this conversation, this is a man's conversation. And when you and I come out of this, we'll go to our respective middle space
Mm-hmm.
where women will be, and we will be better men because we share the man space together.
Exactly.
That's
Because
the way I believe it's supposed to be.
yeah, and that's more like and you see this a lot when it comes down to male and female dynamics. When you have a group of men hanging
Mm-hmm.
out and having their own,
Mm-hmm.
moment as men, all of a sudden you see a
Right.
female coming in, you see how the shift or the male
Yes.
energy change.
Yes.
That alone, should tell you why these kind of conversations should not integrate females for now.
Right.
For now, because at the end, we want justice and balance for everybody, right? Because I think
That's correct.
if it's easier for us for men to just point at another man and hold them accountable than
Right.
pointing to a female and try or even talk about how to handle it or accountable. Because I don't know, it's something about us as men that we just want to cater and protect them. But I think it's better for us to men to just go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's go to the states that we have a better shot to make sure we can just protect men from fraudulent marriages, paternity fraud. We can focus our energy on that and make sure we get it done.
Right.
Make sure we get it done, because I know, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, man. And it's always the same problem when you integrate this kind of feminist talking points. It just feel like they just want to drive the conversation like to the end of the tunnel kind of thing, right? Like the moving the goalpost technique is just out of control. All of a sudden you're talking about veganism and climate change and why the moon is not real. You start thinking about what happened here. We were talking about, hey, the laws are not fair when it comes to marriage, and all of a sudden we're talking about all this stuff that make no sense, which is our mistake. We're making that because logically we think, okay, the problem is between men and women. We have to invite females to get their perspective.
Right.
But what happens when we get their perspective? They're not equipped to function as men. That's why they don't want to fix the problem. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I do. And I think that going back to the beginning of our conversation, I think that we got to know who we are as men, independent of women, so that we can remain men when we come together with women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I, I talk about the cautionary tale that I'm sharing and how the imbalance, something was going on that erupted in the most bizarre kind of situation the most bizarre, I believe, situation I've ever experienced in my personal life. When I think about what happened with my parents as a child, there was nothing that I could do as a child to manage that any different than I did. So moving into this situation with my ex-wife felt like I had been man enough, uh, mature enough as a man to be able to handle whatever it is that we were going through. But that's because I had man space even in that time. There were men that I would talk to separate from her. So if I think about who are the women that she was talking to,
That's a good question, Ulysses.
who are the women that she was talking to that would have informed her relationships about men? And people would say to me, there was probably another guy. She was probably seeing somebody else. Well, that's not really the question that I'm asking about whether or not she was seeing someone else. The question that I'm asking is who were the women that were informing her about what it means to be a mother, a wife, a woman for me? Because there were certainly men that I was talking to about what it meant to be a husband, father, man for her. And I thought I was bringing some of the best knowledge and some of the best care to the relationship. And there were times, Pablo, where I would ask myself, well, what did I do? What happened? What me? So I started looking at myself going, what did I do? The fact of the matter is you can do everything with integrity, with care, with compassion, with optimal love, but you can't force the other person to do it. And you can't hold yourself responsible for the other person not holding up their end of the bargain. So again, there may be two sides to a story, but if my story is transparent and very visible, but your story is dark and hidden, then what difference does it make that mine is transparent and clear when yours is dark,
Yeah.
when yours is hidden? You don't blame me for yours being hidden. You were the one who decided to hide it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Brother, I thank you so much for this time.
no problem, no problem. I think there's a lot of conversations that we goes on this
Mm-hmm.
that we're gonna continue having these conversations, and hopefully, and we don't talk about this, but I know even this conversation alone can reach out to a lot or to someone that needs this kind of information, because I know you went through it. I know for personal experience. I have friends. This is not empirical, right? This is completely personal experience. But they gone through the same thing,
Right,
and they have no idea. They think that they probably in their own bubble kind of thing, and
right.
you know this kind of information can help them just realize that they're not alone. We having these type of conversations.
I hope so, man. And as I mentioned, I can't tell everybody about their red flags. I can say some general things. If you have already gone through, if you've already been snapped into a new reality of pain, I can help you there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just by sharing these stories, it'll give people something to look at and consider. I don't want anybody to be paranoid. I don't want men who are in good relationships to start looking and going, I wonder what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I do think it's important to try to be as connected as possible as you can to the woman that you're with, but don't ever disconnect from the larger community, that support group that made you who you are.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ulysses. Ulysses, where they can reach out to you? Can you tell us where the name of your website, email, any social media?
Yeah, yeah. So it's Ulysses Butch Slaughter, UlyssesButchSlaughter.com. Social media, you can find me, Butch Slaughter, Butch Slaughter on Instagram, and it's B Slaughter on TikTok. I'm not doing Facebook right now, but Ulysses Butch Slaughter at gmail.com is the way to get to me directly.
Yeah, and we're gonna put the information in the description down. That way, you guys can go and reach out to him, asking any questions, anything that you guys need. And in the meantime, Ulysses, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to you again soon, man.
Yes, we will, and I will let you know. We figure out sometimes, and it's upcoming weeks that we can come back and just go more into inside baseball kind of thing to make
Yep.
sure we can just dismantle some of the things going on here in the States. For now,
All right.
we're talking about the United States. I don't know around the world, but United States. All right?
Thank you, man.
No
Take good
problem,
care.
man.